about tourism and ecotourism in protected areas in Queensland. It's happening all across Australia. Obviously, particularly of interest in Queensland is we have an Olympics and Paralympics coming in 32. We know there will be a huge amount of interest. More visitor nights to Queensland, more ecotourism opportunities. We're also very blessed that the government at the moment is spending up big on acquiring new land for protected areas, which is great, adding to our protected area state. All of which means we need to keep a live conversation going about how to get the right protected areas and the right types of recreation and tourism happening. And so the title of today's seminar is Ecotourism Protected Areas, Are We on the Right Track? So things are happening. We've got some different perspectives today we want to bring to the table. No one's saying we've got the perfect situation at the moment, but what I always like to think about is how can we improve what we've got? Let's not throw it out and start again. Let's just say what needs to be tweaked, what needs to be changed to make sure that as we approach the Olympics and Paralympics and beyond, we've got a really good system for protected area conservation, biodiversity conservation, and also ecotourism and recreation. So that's a little bit of the context of today, why we've invited you to come along. The other is that we've got an ecotourism in the National Parks policy. It's about 2 years old, so we're looking to review that. So we're going to take some of the thoughts and feedback today and just make sure our policy is really up to date, because as you would know, there's an election coming in October. So we want to use that revised policy to be lobbying into government to say, whether it be the Labor government gets re-elected, the NPAQ gets brought in October, this is our policy on ecotourism and protected areas. This is how we want to invest in the sector for conservation, also for economic and social benefit. We're really keen to hear from our speakers. We've got 4 great speakers today. And before I launch into our speakers, of course, I would just first like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we're meeting here today, over 30 people. Pay our respects collectively to their elders past, present and emerging. And we will also probably be talking about other lands in Queensland, so I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of those other lands that might come up in the conversation today about our respects. We will have 4 speakers, so the format today is we're going to have 4 presentations, 10 to 15 minutes each, so hold on to your thoughts, questions, and then at the end we're going to open it up to the floor and have a bit of Q&A, see what's interesting you, see what questions you've got, see how we might be able to improve on the system we've got currently. It's not a deliberate order, but what we did in the program was Suzanne, who's the NPAQ president, but also a very sage, been environmental consultant for many years before retiring. She's also had many experiences with multi-day walks, and so is from a consumer point of view. She's got a lot of lessons to share, her experiences walking beautiful ecotourism trails. We're then going to talk to Peter, who's from the Fraser Island Defenders Organisation, so GARI, conservation community sector, so we're going to get community conservation sector viewpoint. And then we're going to hand over to Nadine, who comes from Ecotourism Australia. So she's going to give us a little bit of perspective of the ecotourism industry. What's happening in the industry, what's changed, what's evolving. And then we're going to come to Christy, who is the ecotourism manager for the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service. So the land managers of Queensland's national parks and protected areas, to hear what the government's doing to respond to the challenge of more protected areas and more tourism demand. So hopefully a nice balanced conversation. But ultimately, we really want to come back to my point. Today is really about hearing from our speakers and then thinking about how we can make things better. So yeah, you might all come from different perspectives, but we need to build on what we've got, tweak it, not start as well. So that's enough for me. I should have probably introduced myself. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the National Parks Association of Queensland. I'm very proud to be here working with the NPAQ team and some of the team here. It's been holding here for just over 18 months. Spent 30 years working in government in tourism, ecotourism conservation, working with the Park Service. So this is a very interesting topic to me personally, and working with Burra in South Australia's national park. So I'm really keen to see Queensland become a leader in protected area management and ecotourism. And I think from work together, we can really make that happen. So
I'm Suzanne Cooper, the President of the National Parks Association, and I've had quite a lot of professional experience in this area as well. Right, I'm coming today, commercial ecotourism. This is multi-day walks in national parks based on first-hand experience. I'd also like to cover what's not on track and what needs to change. So this is a map of the 14 commercial multi-day walks in national parks I've done over the last 12 years. So as you can see, they cover a range of geographies, a range of climates, a range of contexts. The ones in red are the case studies I'm looking into in more detail today, but some of my conclusions and recommendations are based on all of the total experience that I've had, but I just don't have time to go into each one of them as a case study. So I've just picked out a couple. So the first one is the Cape to Cape walk in the Western Australian coast, the Lamington National Park. It's around the Margaret River area. So it's a 3 to 5 day walk. And this is just some of the scenery. There's one of the amazing Eucalyptus jacksonii, one of the largest trees in the world, down there on the right-hand side. This is a 3 to 5 day walk. All of these walks that we've done, and including the ones in case studies today, none of them had private accommodation in the national park. They were all adjacency, and we'll look at different models of that worked. So this is the middle photo. There is a caravan. We stayed in some cabins in a caravan park in one of the very small little coastal towns. Came back there each night, and he just went on to start the walk the next day. So the accommodation was very much, and this is started off as a one-man business, and it's now developed into a very successful ecotourism operation in the Margaret River area, still run and managed by the person who started it up. But again, they use the model of adjacency. So it's interesting, talking to the managing director of this company, he said what is often on his mind is how to put back into the region and how to make what I'm doing good for the region as a whole. So we've got some of the stats there. I won't read it out. You can read the points. But so much, if you're living in local accommodation, whether it's a little town, a hamlet, a village, on a farm, whatever, so much of that expenditure goes back into the local community or region. The model for other private accommodation is very different in national parks, where a lot of that goes back into the capital cities or the central head office or whatever. So a lot of people employ, and they lose a lot of revenue and employment if they built private cabins within the national park. So again, it's a very different model. And the model is growing. As part of the model too is their whole approach to guiding. And I'm going to come back to this because it's a really key point later. All of his guides are resident in the region. So they don't come in for a few months and go away, they're actual local residents. They work 1 to 2 days a week in the shoulder seasons, which is the peak season for walking, autumn and spring. Summer's too hot, winter can be a bit cold and blustery. So autumn and spring are the key seasonal times of year for the walks. And they offer specific expertise in relevant areas. One is a semi-retired geologist. Another one has expertise or very deep knowledge in the local flora and fauna. But it's interesting how they structure the walks. Each day has a theme, and you can see the 4 themes down there. So the retired geologist takes all the walks on day 1 to really talk and highlight aspects of the geology. The person who's got expertise in flora and fauna, the local flora and fauna, does the walk on day 2. So you don't get the same guide every day. Instead, this model has been so effective, and not everyone wants to work 4 or 5 days a week guiding. So they're very happy, whether they're semi-retired, have another small business, whatever, they're very happy to guide 1 or 2 days a week. So it's been very effective and very good as well. Increasingly, they're getting more and more water walks from schools, particularly international schools, 4 different international schools around the Perth region, as well as other schools coming in, some of them for 2 days every week in the peak seasons. So it's an interesting model for guiding. Look, I know there's a lot of statistics here. Don't worry about trying to digest more. Have a look at the last column, 2022 to 23. a very recent financial year, and some of the expenditure that goes back from this one small business into the local economy because of the model they've set up. Over nearly $2 million down the bottom into the local economy. And you can see there some of the other elements: local staff, local mechanics, the local accountants and bookkeepers, local restaurants and the catering, local accommodation. Interestingly, some of the accommodation is in cabins in caravan parks, etc. Others are in units, in just unit blocks that are built for holiday makers. Interestingly enough, this business has recently purchased a whole block of units, and that is their accommodation for the walkers. But in the off-season for walking, in summer, Margaret River area is swamped by people who just want to surf and swim and spend time on the beach. So again, they've got a model that actually generates income for them, their business the whole year round. They can accommodate other visitors in the off-peak seasons for walking, such as summer, as well as the walking the peak seasons. So that's an interesting model for guiding, as well as one adjacency example. And there's been many other examples that we've stayed in using accommodation in local towns and villages. The second one is Lamington National Park. Did this about a month ago. Very, there's lovely remote rock pool, pristine, right out in the middle of nowhere, and it's tropical savanna vegetation, recently burnt off, right outside the beautiful waterfalls. What's interesting about this is the accommodation, and this is a multinational company. And it's actually in the National Park's campsite. There's a small area on the edge of the campsite that's set aside for small groups, group tours, group bookings. We had a group of about 15 school students in another one close to us for a couple of nights. But this is where we stayed, and you can see the tents are fairly small, so 1 to 2 people. And there's the inside of the tent in the middle. Very incredibly comfortable, simple, and it's semi-permanent, or it's temporary, because on the right-hand side there, you can see that what we did at the end of the walk was to put up over flies over the tents, in case they, to stop insects and dust or whatever getting in, because there might be 3 or 4 days gap before the next tour group came in. So the tents stayed there during the dry season. As soon as September comes, they pack them up, they pack up the whole thing. Nothing is left, it's all very, very temporary. And removable. So the tents stay, you just put a fly over them to protect them for a few days or a week until the next group comes. Very comfortable. The tents don't have a fly, you don't need it. Up in near Darwin, you don't get rain in the dry season. So every night you just look out at the stars and the moon and the sky, and it's just lovely, part of that experience. Catering, there are 2 of the guides there. Catering was delicious, but it was simple. And you can see there the setup working so well. Little gas stove, everything's just portable, temporary. It's all anyone wanted. And this is a group of my age group. And increasingly, as all of the ecotourism operators will tell you, the key age cohort is 50 plus. So we're not looking for luxury or comfort. The group of friends I walk with, and I've done many of these walks with, 8 or so of us, none of us want luxury, and we're not atypical. This was so comfortable, and some of the simplicity really adds to the experience. It really gives you some of those memories that you get staying in a semi-plush cabin. Okay, next example, Flinders Ranges on the Hyson Trail in South Australia. It's the amazing geology and topography there. And on the left-hand side, they're the cabins we stayed in. And the right-hand side is the outlook from the cabins. They're immediately adjacent to the National Park. So you still get the sense of almost wilderness. You get the sense of really the quiet space, the amazing landscape. But what was interesting about this is it was actually on a family sheep farm. And the family in the drought in the 1960s, they were very running, economics was really tight. They had to diversify. So instead of selling off their farm, selling off their sheep, they actually decided to develop a little ecotourism accommodation area on the farm. It is now the main income earner for that farm, even though they still run sheep. and look at the number of visitors they take each year. The sites vary. There's cabins, there's tent sites, caravan sites, powered, unpowered. So there's a range of very simple accommodation. Nothing is flash. It can accommodate up to 700 people. It employs that many staff. Interesting, the similar model is also on the Undarra lava tubes in Queensland. That was a family cattle station. And again, they look to diversify and to generate another income stream. And that too, the income from tourism accommodation, ecotourism, is higher than that generated by cattle on the farm. So almost all national parks have some sort of agricultural property adjacent in some areas. So you sense it's a real opportunity of what could be there. It could be accommodation options. So it's worked really well. The fourth one, totally different. Burra Trail on the Northern Territory. And it's an incredibly low footprint accommodation. Again, this was another 4 to 5 day walk. The Lower Pinter Trail is longer than that. We did a 4 to 5 day walk. And the actual camp was set up in the dry bed of the Finney River. And as you can see in the dry season, it's just sandy, this big sandy bed. What you can see in the middle there is our little dining area. It was just some chairs around the little small campfire that we go to at night. And you can see the lounge kitchen area to the right-hand side. Incredibly simple, very temporary as well. At the dry season, everything is packed up and moved. So there's the kitchen inside of the lounge area, very basic. The tents we stayed in, slept in a swag. One night I took all the dingoes and the stars, so a few of us dragged our swags out, just laid them in the bed of the river and slept there. It was an amazing experience. It's all part of the experience you actually want on those walks. But what was interesting was water is a critical issue around Alice Springs in the dry season. So on the left there, hanging off that little block, is a little tin can. If you went to the toilet and wanted to wash your hands, you filled up that tin can with water, and that's what you used to wash your hands with. If you needed a shower at the end of the day, most of us did after walking all day, in your walk, you filled up that little bowl with water. You took it to the little shower on the right, which was just a few of the stones from around there with a little wall to give you a bit of privacy, and you just splashed yourself down with the water. That is all you needed. It worked incredibly well, and no one felt uncomfortable or no one felt as if disadvantaged in any way. So this situation was very unique. There's very few places that could have a campsite in the bed of a river. But it just shows that you can adapt some of the models to the geography, the climate, the landscapes. This wouldn't work, you couldn't do this in many areas, but there are many areas where it does work very well. And it just shows that using the environment, think of what can work here. Oh, I should also say they cap the maximum number of people on any walk as 9, so that's the maximum number that can come at any one time. And the memories of that walk are really quite amazing. The word sustainable ecotourism, it's a word that's used a lot. Every definition, virtually, that you can look up about what is ecotourism has the critical areas of the interpretation, the education, the appreciation of nature and the landscape and the ecosystem you walk through. That is a core part of ecotourism. It's a critical big part of it in every definition. So, what is sustainable ecotourism and how close are we? One example is, it's a word that's overused a lot, sustainability. This is a recent report. The word is used 48 times in 7 pages. So it's what's called almost a weasel word, it just pops up everywhere. And it's really not unpacked in appropriate detail, or it really needs contextualising. Because sustainability for an ecotourism walk could be quite different from sustainability from design of a high-rise building. So it's a word that's overused without enough context, without enough interpretation. One of the challenges, I want to come back to guiding, is I think for me that is it's essential part of giving you that appreciation and understanding of what you've walked through, what you've experienced. And that is not being done well. I'm not saying there are not examples of where it is done well, but on the 14 walks, commercial walks I've done, I could say that we learned very little, actually. And our level of understanding of what the appreciation really didn't grow much. And not all of these walks were guided, but even on a walk where you don't have a guide with you all the time, there's still someone there who transports you, belongs to the company that you pay to do the walk with, picks you up each day, tells you the itinerary, etc. that you could still get what are you going to see on day 2, the start of day 2? What are you going to see today? Look out for this, this, and this. Or you can give a little one-paragraph printout. What's special about today? What's unique about day 3? What's amazing about day 4? You never get that. And even the guides we had, wonderful people, enjoyed their company, but learned very little. And a lot of this is the model of the guiding companies, I think, where they don't place a priority on this. The guides are all accredited and trained, but it's all in safety, first aid, outdoor recreation, etc. There is very little about the knowledge and context. And you can see one of the challenges here is if you're a guide up at, in the Northern Territory, 3 months a year, probably the walks will run. September, they all close down. What do you do then? You go down to Tasmania and do the walks in the summer there. Then you might go back to Flinders Ranges or Kangaroo Island in spring. So you actually move around a lot. Very few guides can actually operate in the same area all year. So it's a very, very mobile network or model for it. So the guide model needs to improve. So it's very poorly addressed. We learn very little. It's not a priority for the businesses. So that is the core ingredient of sustainable ecotourism. We're not there yet. And just to summarise, we've seen a number of adjacency models, just those 4 examples, and there are many more examples that I've experienced, but again, time limitations, a cattle station or an agricultural station, in a riverbed, nearby towns and villages, in national park camping grounds where there's a small area set aside for larger groups. So based on the 14 commercial walks in national parks I've done, the multi-day walks, adjacency works really well. I can't think of an example where it hasn't been a really positive, good experience. So in terms of sustainability, there are 3 critical elements: economy, society, environment. Big tick on adjacency in the models delivered on a lot of the environmental benefits. Big tick on the local, regional, economic benefits. But the understanding, the appreciation is not being delivered on. And that's where there's a big gap, and it's a real opportunity for a big step up of what can we do differently here.
Fraser Island Tourism Organisation. My address is going to be specifically about Burra, that is Fraser Island. And through the background, that's our logo. Prior came into existence in the 1970s when then the job agency government had issued mining leases over 80% of the land and had expressed the intention to mine as much as it possibly could, as fast as it possibly could. Then a long battle. We were successful in winning that battle, ending mineral sand mining in Burra. But then in the 1990s, we announced a campaign to end logging on the island. And logging has been going on for 20 years. But with the change in technology, there was much more damage being done in the latter times. And that was a big battle, but eventually we won that battle. During all of this time, we argued that the future of Burra, the economic future of Burra, lay not in destructive industries, but rather in nature-based tourism. So we were advocating nature-based tourism right from the very start. We then went on to advocate for the majority of the island, all the other areas of the island, and all the areas which Gary is well known for its magnificent scenery, beautiful sand blows, magnificent forests, magnificent bird shows, and sculptured coloured sands, and also giant trees, which is most extraordinary on an island. It's basically something one of the reasons why Burra is called Burra is to have a subtropical rainforest, such as we have rainforest, such as very low fertility sand. The island is also the traditional country of the Bachelor people, and I pay my respects to Bachelor people. And they add another dimension to the island and another potential in terms of developing the tourism industry on the island. The Bachelor people are a civilization that goes back to 60,000 years, and I'm at school and keen to be involved in the development of a tourism industry where they can show off their culture. So tourism has boomed, and it, particularly since the 1980s, Galway had traditionally had very low human population, Aboriginal population that is. Then it was reduced to virtually nothing under early Queensland government policy and depopulated Ireland. We had to somehow. But for a long time, it was effectively no population done. Then loggers and fishers and early settlers started coming back onto the island. And now we have a situation where the official figure is series of 500,000 visitations per year. And a lot of the visitation is by way of unregulated tourism provided by involved goods and bringing travellers. Burra has undergone this massive expansion in terms of visitation. And while that is undoubtedly meant a huge economic benefit, it brings disadvantages. Now, Fido is essentially we're a conservation organisation. We pay great regard to the concept of the carbon principle. That the protected areas are there principally to protect nature. That causes a degree of conflict in that governments more and more see beautiful natural places as places to be exploited in the tourism sense. And we can't complain about that because we advocate that right from the start. But there are consequences. And in our dealings with government and management, Now, we make continual reference back to carbon. First and foremost, as we develop this industry, we need to be protecting nature. To that end, I'll just give some examples of this is that's a long picture of something like that. But the beach, this magnificent beach, from our perspective, the beach is a biological entity. It's the home for a myriad of species, from the microscopic to the large creatures that we are. And all this will there is a basic incompatibility between using the beach as a highway and recognising that it is a biological entity that has its own rights that need to be respected. And that's of considerable concern to us. I've gone off sort of and when I first went to Burra, which was in the 1960s, I was very privileged. I was working for CSIRO. A friend of mine, which was also a study methodology of trade sand, and it took myself and my wife to go to Burra in one place, and it was up there for an Easter weekend. We saw about 6 palms. It was unbelievable. The fishing was just extraordinary. The wildlife was abundant. But that's not the case. So we just accept that that's not the case. This particular bird, they live in pairs, they might be alive. The pilot was to catch it. You would come across a pair every 100 metres or so along the beach. You rarely see one now. Occasionally you'll see one or only one whose partner is completely vehicle. It's quite tragic. So there has been an impact, and management somehow. Similarly, at night, the beach is just alive with ghost crabs. Crawling with them. We hardly see the ghost crab. They're just gone naturally. There's only one little section of that eastern beach between two headlands called NPAQ and one point that doesn't have particular traffic on it regularly, and I haven't personally been there at night, but rangers told me that it's still alive in animals. So, a large section of that eastern coast, the biology of it has been substantially modified. Roads are a problem on Garden, and traffic is a problem on Garden. Garden is a sand island. It's unstable. It's stabilised by the vegetation, but basically it is sand that's been accumulated over long periods of time. When vehicles traverse, particularly during dry times, the sand gets stirred up, and there are a number of consequences. Some of the most dramatic, as far as the people driving on the island is concerned, is of course to get bogged. The bogged on Burra is during dry times it's just one of the hazards of the experience. But there is a much more serious one where the sand gets churned up in the dry times. It develops a distal character, it becomes highly liquid, That means it repels water. And so you end up with a road where all the sand is powdery and it repels water. And then when a rain event comes, instead of the sand absorbing water, it just all gets, the sand just gets washed downstream by the flow of water. So you get this massive displacement, and often you drive through sections of road where the natural groundworks up above the top of the hill. And so what happens with the sand? It goes down the hill, and that's another example of the washed road. And another one, that's John Sinclair, the founder of Friday. Now, it says, that sand gets displaced, it gets washed over native vegetation, and more concerning, it gets displaced into creeks and lakes. And perch lakes in Wangari are really special. Wangari is got 8% of perch lakes in the world. And there is no outflow of perch lakes. So all the sand that goes into a perch lake is filling the lake. So we are particularly concerned about it. To that end, Binna has a long-term proposal that we are going to continue to progress, that is to look at means to develop light rail through some of the major sections. We're looking at from Fisher to Burra, that's like Mackenzie to Central Station out to Burra, which is the section of the inland road system that carries most of the tourist traffic. And we believe that we can do two things: get the traffic off the road and stop people getting robbed, and we can help prevent this erosion that can be potentially so damaging. So that's an issue that we have issued in the past and we will continue to issue. So, one of the other issues on the beachfront that has been a real concern, and I'm just focusing on some of the problems that come from the advent of what is now mass tourism. Migratory birds that migrate from usually lower in the Arctic region. Roost in certain places, they roost traditionally at all point. Many of these Fido ran a campaign to try to get a section of road down on the yard closed seasonally to stop the disruption of these birds. They arrive in the Arctic, they are exhausted and depleted of energy, they have lost a half of or more of their body weight, and they need not to be disturbed. And of course, the traffic comes up and down. We lost that battle. Whether we will try it again at some stage, the much Aboriginal people is interesting. But the four-wheel drive lobby had a huge political amount. There's a huge amount of money that was invested in this. And so you lost that money. That's another example. You can't talk about Gari without talking about particulars. Probably they lived in harmony with Aboriginal people and early settlers for a long time. Then, unfortunately, increased visitation. They got habituated. Unfortunately, people feed them, and that's led to all sorts of unfortunate consequences.
GPS
Like
signal lost.
being shy and aggressive animals, moving mainly from bush to moving out on the beach and taking on human beings, and unfortunately times aggressive. And here's an example of this is what we lead to. It's Eli Creek. Creek. This is talking about this is just another example of erosion that can happen as a result of excessive visitation and lack of provision of trunks. Tapu or Indian Head is one of the most spectacular places in the island because the consequence of the damage that's done and because of the erosion. Parking can get chaotic in some of the, not just parking, the high levels of visitation in particular areas. This is something where, the parking is reasonably regulated. It does get the beach at times is like surface it's not really. And this is Eli Creek on the east coast. It gets massive, these hotspots get massively high levels of visitation, 3 periods of typical Christmas, New Year, Easter, and the towns. So, just quickly in conclusion, I think, coming from the conservation perspective, ecotourism is one aspect of walking in its own mind, but it brings us to ourselves.
It's a bit of a tough gig to follow to be the industry perspective after seeing all of this, but I think, I hope that I can show you a very different side of the tourism that we represent and the principles that we like to support. So tourism isn't tourism, we've heard that today quite a few times. And I think what I would like to start with is actually looking at those photos. We represent tourism businesses that take visitors to Burra and many national parks. A lot of the destruction we're seeing there is self-drive tourism, so that's unregulated. It's people that live in Brisbane and Queensland and decide to have a weekend away on Fraser Island, feeding dingoes, things like that. That shouldn't, and I hope does not happen with not only certified tourism operators but actual commercial tourism businesses, because they have to uphold themselves to the highest standards when it comes to operating in those national parks. So we represent the industry in that sense, so not necessarily business to consumer, but very much business to business. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia. We are a national body, so I'd like to pay my respects to all elders, past and present, and thank them for their continued custodianship of the lands and waters that we have the privilege of showcasing to our tourists every day. If you're not familiar with Ecotourism Australia, we are the peak body for ecotourism, nature-based tourism and sustainable tourism in Australia. We have been around for over 30 years, so founded in 1991 by a group of passionate people that all felt that clearly tourism in national parks was increasing. However, there was no standard for these operators to actually abide by. So that's what led to the development of the very first Eco Accreditation Program back in 1996. That's still our flagship program today that we operate all these years after, and it's significantly grown, luckily. I should have said as well, we are a not-for-profit, non-government peak body group, so we are represented by industry for industry, and we mainly represent the industry by offering certification services to those businesses and destinations. So there's 2 programs that are key, which is the Eco certification that I will focus on today. That's for the nature-based sector, but we have also in the last couple of years developed programs that help urban operators, for example, a hotel in the city, to be more sustainable, but very different principles, so I won't go into that too much. At this stage, we have just over 500 certified businesses in the country. As you can see, Queensland is definitely our hotspot. There's various reasons, other than it being, a mecca for tourism, but largely hotspots are places like the Great Burra Reef, where it's mandatory or you get longer permits if you are certified. So obviously, going to World Heritage areas such as the Daintree Rainforest, as well as the Great Barrier Reef, it's extremely important to make sure that those businesses are doing the right thing and that they have the highest standard of operations. More than 2/3 of those 500 businesses do operate in national parks. A lot of them, just as we've seen from Suzanne, operate walking tours, bird watching tours, things like that. Also, marine-wise, it's obviously a lot of snorkeling, diving activities, boat tours as well. We currently also work with close to 20 destinations in Australia that are on various pathways of getting recognised for their efforts. I'd also like to say that this is not a recognition of these are the best destinations in the world, but it shows that they have improved significantly and that they have met over 100 criteria when it comes to ecotourism in those destinations. So we always assess sustainability from a tourism lens. We're not, when it comes to wine tourism, we're not a sustainable agriculture accreditation. We always look at the tourism lens for everything we do. We know that tourism is a huge industry in the world and Australia, but what we are seeing, and that's really encouraging, is every year statistics like this get published, is that we see a big increase in travellers wanting to travel more sustainably. Obviously, as Suzanne said, that means a lot of different things to a lot of people. The intent is great, but we also need to see that people follow through with that. And sometimes, if a tour is high quality, that comes at a certain cost. So therefore, it could be perceived that sustainable tourism is more expensive, but it doesn't have to be the case. Especially as Suzanne said, in terms of luxury, a lot of younger people, millennials, Gen Z, and especially after COVID, are very much looking for wide open spaces. We don't need to talk about the various mental health benefits that national parks and nature have for us. So I think it's an amazing opportunity to see that people aren't necessarily coming to see the Sydney Opera House. They still do, but they're also equally excited to travel through various lands of national parks that we have. I won't go into the definition again. We've seen that before, but we have got the this our definition that has been widely adopted, and some people spend their entire career and PhDs on the definition of ecotourism. So I don't think we will agree on a particular one. But when it comes to the principles, I did want to touch on those 4 factors. So for us, sustainability tourism is all about a suitable balance between minimal impact, which is obviously environmentally predominantly, but then also positively contributing to things like conservation. So when businesses that are eco-certified by us, they all contribute in various ways to conservation. For example, we have a lot of marine operators on the reef that support coral planting, for example. They donate a portion of their revenue to conservation initiatives. We have a lot of operators that use national parks because that is their product. So they also make sure that when it comes to maintaining walks or wildlife sightings, injured wildlife, that they report those things to the relevant authorities. Interpretation was mentioned a few times, and that really is the core of what makes ecotourism ecotourism. We always say that all ecotourism is sustainable, but not all sustainable tourism is ecotourism. So, as I said, a hotel in the city doesn't necessarily provide any interpretation as such, but it is important when we go on a guided tour through a national park. And I'm not from Australia. I've lived here for 8 years now, but I always take a guided tour because I learn so much. I see wildlife that I wouldn't see if I go to Gari myself. I love doing First Nations tours because it's a much more interactive and authentic experience. So those things do really stay with me. And as Suzanne said, I'm sad to see that it's not done as well as it could be, because I think there's a lot of need in the industry, and tour guides are massively needed, and there's just not enough of them. So there's a lot of work needed in this space, but also when it comes to eco guide certification, for example, we work with Savannah guides, and that training is purely delivered on interpretation. There's master reef guides training that happens on the Great Barrier Reef to really share those values. So at the end of the day, it's not just better for the environment, but also that the visitor experience is much better for it. Like I said, not everyone is as passionate about conservation and sustainability as a lot of us in the room. So purely from a commercial perspective as well, Brand Australia is nature, wildlife. Many people go to the reef, the rainforests, the outback. So we, as the tourism industry, need to protect our product. So we actually have, those amazing places and World Heritage areas to showcase for many more generations to come. I did briefly want to touch on what we do in terms of our certification. Suzanne said, the word sustainability was overused, and that is correct. What we do is we interpret the word sustainability over 300 different criteria and indicators that are needed to get eco-certified. So that process can take 6 to 12 months. It's really no easy undertaking. We have the majority of our businesses are small, medium-sized businesses, and we're really proud of that because it can often be perceived as a hurdle for the small guys. So we really work with mum and dad operators that might do kayaking tours all the way to a larger enterprise level. So we have 4 pillars of sustainability that I mentioned, and I won't have time to go into all of these, but these are the first 2. So overall, a good management of the business is required in terms of policies. Staff training is absolutely crucial, especially when we've heard that so many staff are moving from A to B, and then every 3 months you're retraining guides. You need to bring that knowledge back up to speed in terms of the environmental standards, but also the knowledge of the local area. So that is really crucial, that there's a good induction policy that goes beyond the safety and requirements like that, but also that the customer experience comes first by having a knowledgeable guide that doesn't feel like they've just read it all in a textbook, but they actually do it in an authentic and engaging way. Environmental impact is the biggest section by far. So apart from the criteria sections listed here, we also have at least another 20 sections on just minimal impact criteria in protected areas. If you're a snorkeling company, you have to do at least another 30 criteria on snorkeling and minimal impact. If you do wildlife activities, even if it's bird watching, so I'm not talking feeding wildlife by any means, but you then have to do a whole other subset of criteria. So it's really heavily regulated, and as I said, it's audited every 3 years as well on site. Whilst we do focus on the environment, it's equally important to us that there's positive benefits to the local community, but also culture. So especially when it comes to ecotourism, I think the very first ecotourism guides I would like to think of as First Nations people, because they have a really unique way to showcasing their lands, but also the appreciation and the respect that comes with it, whether it's tasting bush tucker or feeding certain plants and leaves, like those sort of things that's the knowledge that I would love to give to everyone in tourism, especially international visitors, because we have to recognise that they probably don't know that much about Australia, especially in terms of the environment, but also the species and the culture. So it's important that they don't just learn the basics, but they learn about conservation, they learn how they can make a difference when they return home. So in summary, are we on the right track? I would like to believe that we have come a very long way in the 30 years that we've been around as an organisation. There's definitely a growing demand for what we do. It's exciting because there's also a lot more ESG requirements in terms of corporate social responsibility. So there's a lot more, I would say it's not just incentivized, but there's a lot more stick as well for doing the wrong thing, which sometimes can help as well, because we want to make sure that the businesses that do get certified, they're really working hard to keep that recognition level. So we don't want anyone that's not regulated or not certified, letting the entire industry down by doing the wrong thing. If it's done correctly, we talked about economic benefits. A lot of the certified businesses do contribute financially, but also in kind to conservation initiatives. And in terms of the standards for us, we really would love to see every single tourism operation in a national park to be certified, whether that's for us or a different entity, but to make sure that there's a best practice standard that we can apply across the board. And I leave you with this thought because I think that sums up perfectly what I'm trying to say is, you want to plan for the visitor you want, which is ideally our future ecotourist, and nothing but. But in the meantime, we do need to manage the visitors that we have, and we have seen that not everyone is the perfect textbook ecotourist yet. So I'll leave you with that.
So I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands in which we meet and the lands that are discussed in today's presentation. I'd also like to acknowledge their enduring connection to land, wind, seas and skies. The ecotourism team in Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service is a small team of dedicated officers that works across a range of ecotourism related projects on and adjacent to our protected areas. Queensland has a natural competitive advantage and attracts a huge number of domestic and international visitors. And tourism research tells us that experiencing nature is a primary motivator for visitors to our country and to our state. We have the most naturally biodiverse state. It's a great diversity of landscapes from the reef to the rainforest, the outback, lush forests, beaches and mountains. And our World Heritage areas are the jewels of the crown, so to speak. Our protected area estate plays a large role in the nature-based tourism industry. And over the last 9 years, the popularity of bushwalking and rainforest walks grew by 81%. Visiting national parks in general grew by 73%. So not only has the demand for our national parks increased, but according to the Global Review Index, the average score for a national park on the Global Review Index is 94.48, which is actually very high. It seems like a meaningless number, but it's very high, and it indicates that visitors are overwhelmingly positive about their visit to the national parks that they visit. To guide the work in our ecotourism space, we've developed an ecotourism plan for protected areas. It provides the strategic direction for the department for the next 5 years. And our key aims under the plan are to enhance ecotourism experiences, build capacity of the tourism industry, and partner with traditional owners for beneficial outcomes. We've got 6 priority areas. You'll note that they're not numbered, and that's a deliberate thing. There's no particular priority order for these priority areas. We are actively working on each and every one. However, today I'll be mostly discussing the 3 highlighted priorities. It makes sense to talk to the first and the third priority together because we certainly make sure that ecotourism experiences are developed in partnership with First Nations people. The department encourages ecotourism proposals to pursue proactive engagement with traditional owners and produce tangible benefits for communities. The department also facilitates capacity building opportunities to ensure that traditional owners have appropriate resources to be meaningfully involved as project partners. So that's during inception, construction, and through the operation of the ecotourism operation. Most ecotourism operations in the protected area estate are authorised under a commercial activity agreement or commercial activity permit, whereby modification to the sites, the construction of infrastructure, or exclusive use are not permitted. Commercial activity agreements may be awarded through an expression of interest process as well, which ensures procedural transparency and ensures that the best operator is selected. And lastly, we also have an opportunity to approve ecotourism facilities under the Nature Conservation Act, only 3 of which have been approved since the provisions have been in place. An example of these projects is the narrow track, which will likely be authorised under a Section 35 of the Nature Conservation Act. The narrow track is a new 3-day hike. The Narrow people have been involved in cultural heritage surveys, determining the trail alignment and construction activities. The trail will be open to free and independent travellers and guided tours, and visitors can do the trail and book a campsite as per they do with every other QPWS campsite. So the only difference for this one is that people would be booking through a commercial tourism operator rather than direct with QPWS. The tourism operator will ensure the greater safety of walkers, so particularly regarding severe weather events and access to potable water, which is a really key issue in remote hiking trails. The tourism operator will also provide day-to-day real-time surveillance of the track. They'll provide monetary and in-kind contributions to help cover the cost of maintaining the trail, and existing public access to the rest of the Whitsunday Island will not be altered in any way. People will still have access to the key attractions, which is usually via a commercial tourism operator. Another example is the Thorsbourne Trail, which is likely to be authorised under a commercial activity agreement. The Thorsbourne Trail is an existing 32-kilometre Class 5 world-renowned trail. Minor works are currently underway to upgrade camping areas and address visitor safety issues, and to better separate user groups, so campers from day visitors. The mandate here for these upgrades is to maintain the existing remote and wild experience, which is what the trail is renowned for. Later this year, we'll release an EOI to market for a tourism operator to conduct guided tours on the trail in partnership with traditional owners. But the public free and independent travel capacity will not be altered in any way, and current access to the trail will remain as it is. The 20-person cap will be utilised for group and education purposes, as well as guided tours. And this remains within the existing cap that was specified in the 2017 management plan. QPWS is working very closely with Banjan and Gidimay people to determine what the tours will look like, amongst other potential linking cultural tourism experiences for the island and surrounds. So since the Nature Conservation Act was changed in 2013, more than 15 projects have been proposed, but only 3 have been approved to date. Approvals to build ecotourism facilities on the protected area estate is not meant to be easy. And testament to that is that we've only had 3 projects approved so far. And it's worth noting that Mamu Tropical Skywalk was originally built and run by QPWS. Green Mountains Campground was a QPWS camping area that needed a big refresh. And the Scenic Rim Trail utilised degraded areas for the siting of infrastructure and provided links into their own adjacent land offerings. National parks contain significant natural, cultural and public use values, and these act as significant constraints to any development, as ecotourism projects need to be consistent with the cardinal principle: protection of these values from significant impact is mandatory and takes priority over any other considerations, including whether a proposal is practically or financially viable. Each project needs to provide benefit back to the protected area, and this is typically through in-kind and financial contribution to the park. And some examples of these are included on the slide. But the intention is that ecotourism facilities are intended to provide a net positive contribution. The department is also working with the tourism industry to facilitate new ecotourism projects on land adjacent to protected areas, utilising previously disturbed areas that can leverage off the iconic experiences within the nearby national parks. We're working with the Department of Tourism and Sport to deliver the Activate Ecotourism Grant Program. It's a program that supports tourism operators to enhance their offering and connection to the neighbouring protected area. We're also looking to reimagine the possibilities for previously cleared areas and post-contact heritage structures. An example of this is the Curtis Island Acquisition and Ecotourism Master Planning Project. This is providing us with an opportunity to look at acquisitions and utilise degraded lands, such as the heavily grazed cattle station on Curtis Island, which then minimises the need for ecotourism infrastructure on national parks. We feel that the adjacency program offers the best of both worlds, an opportunity to experience our natural gems while keeping the bulk of visitor infrastructure, such as accommodation, off-park. So I think to sum up, if we are on the right track, to ecotourism in protected areas, I certainly think that through our stringent assessment processes and focus on adjacency and looking at possibilities next to and neighbouring the protected area estate, we certainly are on the right track. Thanks very much.